Good morning. I'm Jim Sturm, part of the Lewis and Clark Then and Now team, and I'm also a teacher at Clayton Schools in Clayton, Missouri. But today we're in a special treat. I'm here with Mary Wilson, the principal of the Omaha Nation School, the middle school, and those are the students behind us right here. And if they want to wave and say hi, let's go ahead. There we are. We have a great show planned for you today. We have a number of great guests coming up, and Scott will be working with those folks. And these students have presentations for everybody. Ms. Wilson, would you like to say something? Hi to everybody.
I would like to welcome everybody to the land of the Omaha. We have a great bunch of kids, and they're going to have a good time showing what's going on here this year.
All righty. Scott Mandrell, are you there back in St. Louis? If you are willing, let's go and let's see what happens.
Hello, Jim. Thank you. Hello, Ms. Wilson. Nice to see you, and to all the students there at Macy. I wanted to say hello to everybody. We're here in St. Louis today, and for those of you who don't know, I took a few days off the river this week to come back, and my daughter Eleanor, who recently turned 6 years of age, was starting school here in Clayton Public School System, Clayton School District in Clayton, Missouri. So I came home to see her off to her first day of school, and also pick up a very special member of the crew that's going to be coming back with us. For those of you who have been following our story as we've made our way across the country, I'm sure you're aware that our Newfoundland dog, Seaman, that had been traveling with us all year last year and began the year with us this year, passed away in June, and it's been a tough thing for us, but we're very excited today as I return to the river. Our new dog, whose name is Seaman's Bicentennial, and we're going to call him Bison, is going to be joining us, and he's going to be coming out with me today, and we're going to have an opportunity to meet Bison a little bit later in today's broadcast. But first of all, I want to say thank you to Jim and to Ms. Principal Wilson there and all the kids in Macy. Thank you for joining us, and especially to our special guests who are here today, Dwight Howe, Pierre Merrick, and Doran Morris from the Omaha tribe. We're very pleased and thankful to you all for taking the time to join us as well today. As we do each week, we look at what happened on the original expedition 200 years ago, as well as taking a look at what has happened to our expedition in the contemporary expedition in the present day world as we make our way along the Lewis and Clark Trail up the Missouri River. 200 years ago, and remember last year we came to you from down by Onawa, Iowa, which is actually at Blue Lake, where Butch Bovier and the folks there who make the replica boats that are there at Blue Lake for folks to go by and check those out. We encourage you all to stop by there. We were in that area. We were at Decatur, Nebraska, is where we were working out of last year. And since that time, what's happened is the boats have moved on up the river to a wilderness camp that took place actually just for one night, and we were up near getting into the area of Fish Camp and moving up to Dakota. We moved up to Dakota City, and today we're moving into Sioux City, Iowa, which was actually very close to where Lewis and Clark actually did meet with members of the Omaha tribe 200 years ago. As you may remember, last week, on the 11th last week, we had actually had a contemporary meeting on the reservation, on the Omaha Reservation, just outside of Macy. The National Park Service's Tent of Many Voices, Core 2 project, was set up there on the reservation, and we met with members of the tribe there, and we're most honored to be able to share a flag-raising ceremony with them and to be treated to a flag song and a prayer by members of the community there in the tribe. And that was a tremendous experience for us as members of the Discovery Expedition to have that opportunity to reenact that flag raising from a historical perspective, but especially to be able to do it in a contemporary way. And so as the expedition moved along that place past Blackbird Hill, and Blackbird, of course, was the chief of the Omaha just prior to Lewis and Clark, had died several years before Lewis and Clark passed by there because of the smallpox epidemic that had broken out throughout the tribe and had taken the lives of about 400 members of the tribe in 1800. We passed along that area, finally made our way up to Dakota City. And what's interesting, 200 years ago, what's happening, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this today, is that this week is a particularly intense week for the expedition 200 years ago. You may remember Moses Reed. It's been almost 2 weeks since we talked about Moses Reed disappearing. Moses Reed has been sent out with La Liberté to make contact with the Missouri Oto and to talk to local tribes about coming to the river and meeting with members of the expedition. And La Liberté, who knew the Missouri Oto, he's decided to desert. Moses Reed has deserted, and a group of 4 men, including Labiche, are sent out. And Labiche, of course, as was Cruzat, were half Omaha themselves. They had French fathers, and their mothers were Omaha, and who were very familiar with this area, had traded in the area, were familiar with the tribe. They had been sent out to bring Reed in. He was finally brought in. They had been given orders to bring him back dead or alive, and they did bring him back. He realized that if he had not come back with them, that he would have never been able to return to the United States, would have been hunted down as a deserter. But because it was not wartime, the Articles of War would allow some leniency, that despite the fact that he would be punished for his desertion, would not be put to death, would have an opportunity to live out his life. He returns. He runs the gauntlet. He's sentenced to run the gauntlet 4 times, which was a tremendously physical punishment. He was beaten by members of the expedition. They form a line, and he had to run through it 4 times as they beat him. And in fact, it was sort of perceived as a pretty abhorrent act by the members of the Native American community, who thought that this sort of treatment of the soldiers was pretty violent and uncivilized, really. And indeed, perhaps it was. And then, of course, he's also, at that time, they make the determination that he will not be able to be considered as a member of the permanent party, and that's an important thing. And then what happens? Today is the 19th. We know that Floyd was getting ill and was not feeling well, and today on the 19th, Sergeant Floyd is feeling extremely ill, and there's a tremendous amount of concern for him on the expedition. And then, of course, ultimately, we know that tomorrow on the 20th, Floyd dies and is buried at what is now Sioux City, Iowa. So 200 years ago, the Corps is going through a lot of very intensive introspection. They have members who are deserting. They have a member who's on the verge of death. They're having their first interaction with tribes. Of course, on the 11th, when they went out and raised the flag at Blackbird Hill, they expected to have a council with the Omaha, and the tribe was away from its traditional village area there and was out on the plains hunting. And we'll talk a little bit more about that with our guests today. But it was a pretty intense week, and they're starting to really start to understand what it is their mission was 200 years ago as they make their way into Indian country. And the same is true for us. We've had a very exciting week. Of course, last week, having that opportunity at Macy and on the reservation to spend time with our Omaha friends. And then this past week, as we have moved through an area where the river is starting to change, we see the bluff lines falling away and the river becoming different. It's taking on a different character. And of course, as we left Decatur, Decatur was that interesting place where the river was nowhere near where it was 200 years ago. It had been physically moved by man. In fact, the bridge that crosses the river at Decatur, Nebraska, was actually built with no river underneath it. It's called the Dry Land Bridge, and they built this bridge, and then they diverted the river to flow underneath it. And so it's a real dynamic area, and we're getting up now at Sioux City where the river will change fundamentally. And next week you're going to see some images of that as we show you places like Ponca and places where the river becomes much more like it was, flat and shallow. And you'll probably even see some images of Cordelli next week. But at any rate, it's been a tremendous week historically. From a historical perspective, it's been a great week for us on the river. And the boats now are going into Sioux City. We want to remind our audience members today out there to email us questions and comments at Lewis and Clark. That's LEWISANDCLARK. Lewis and Clark, all spelled out, at Clayton, CLAYTON. K12.mo.us. That's Lewis and Clark at Clayton.K12.mo.us. We look forward to answering those questions at the end of the hour. And if we can't get to them today, we'll try to answer those for you online. So let's turn our attention now to our very, very special guests. I guess the first thing I want to do is again, welcome the students from Macy and let them know how much we appreciate them taking the time today to be with us. We're very excited to be able to have you share some things that are unique to your culture and your cultural experience with the rest of the viewing audience. We've got kids from all over the country and adults from all over the country and indeed around the world watching today. And today their focus is on Macy, Nebraska, and the Omaha Indian Reservation. Macy and students at Macy, thank you so much for being here. And can I hear you? Can you guys sound off and say hi to the world? Very enthusiastic. You guys, by the way, are pretty lucky because I was getting good at that hand game, and I'm not there this week. And I was coming up there. I was going to bring a little heat on you with the hand game this week. So I know we're gonna get a chance today to see that. And first of all, what we want to do is talk with our very special guests. And if we can have Jim maybe get the camera where we can see Doran Morris, Pierre Merrick, and Dwight Howe, our three special guests today from the tribe. And we're very pleased to see you. Hope, Pierre, good to see you again. And we're eager to talk about, first of all, where the tribe was 200 years ago. Now, not just physically, and we want to talk about that, but we also want to talk about what was happening with the tribe. You know, interestingly, Clark talks about the fact that you all didn't grow any corn. And I think we know that that's just not the truth, that he kind of maybe had a different perspective. He was moving through there, and that you guys have been growing corn. You can't help it up there in Nebraska for a long, long time. And tell us a little bit about who the Omaha people were 200 years ago when the United States, in the person of the Lewis and Clark expedition, made their first visit.
Yes, Scott, this is Jim, and we have Mr. Morris here who'd like to talk to that point with you. So here we go, Mr. Morris.
At the time, Lewis and Clark made their expedition through what is known as the state of Nebraska. My people lived along the Missouri River. The Omaha name for it was Tonga at Homer, Nebraska. And at that time, we understand that the smallpox epidemic decimated most of the tribal members at the time Lewis and Clark came through. And at that time, the Omaha tribe were agricultural people that grew corn, squash, regular garden items. But at this time of the year, the Omaha tribe were out western Nebraska hunting the buffalo for the winter months. They would dry the meat, they would skin the buffalo hide, and every part of that buffalo was utilized for human consumption and plus clothing.
Can you tell us a little bit? You know, and I appreciate that insight. One of the things that we want to talk about too is, can you talk a little bit about we know that Blackbird had died as part of that epidemic, and that Big Elk was the chief at the time. Can you talk a little bit about the political dynamic within the tribe when Lewis and Clark came by? It had changed a little bit, if I'm not mistaken, between Blackbird's relationship with European traders and some of the opinions that Black Elk had, or Big Elk had rather. Can you talk a little bit about sort of where the tribe was in terms of its own dynamic? I guess also the village location is changing, I believe, at this time, isn't it?
Right prior to Clark expedition journey up the Missouri, my Omaha tribe lived in the vicinity of Bellevue, Nebraska, and Omaha, Nebraska, and it was sort of back and forth for them because they did a lot of hunting, did a lot of agricultural parts of their lives along the Missouri River. At that time, Big Elk, don't know too much about his life, but he did meet with many of the people that came to this country, like the President of the United States. He went back to Washington, met with them, and they talked about the lands that the Omahas owned. It was pretty near half of the state of Nebraska and third of the western state of Iowa. Chief Blackbird, as I understand it, there were not chiefs. They were appointed by the fur traders that came through. But amongst the Omaha tribe, even today, we have 7 tribal leaders. Back in history, these 7 leaders represented the 7 clans that's still with us today. And but at that time, they appointed Chief Blackbeard to be the spokesman of the tribe. He did most of the negotiations for the tribe, such as fur trading, utensils, gunpowder, rifles, and as such.
I appreciate that, and I'm glad you made mention of that about the governmental structure and about the use of the word chief and this idea of the leadership within the tribe. A lot of times the Europeans making those kind of designations has really skewed our understanding of the tribal structure. And in fact, I know that I live in a town that has 7 aldermen, and sometimes, you know, the mayor's not always the guy who's really from where the power comes. So we need to rethink our way of understanding the council and the tribal leadership both then and now. But you talked about the 7 clans, and I know that that's something that I think is going to be real important for our viewing audience to understand about how the tribe saw itself, how the tribe functioned, and obviously the 7 clans and the very important role that they played both in the ceremonial as well as the daily life. And if you could talk about that a little bit, and if you would, and I'm gonna ask Dwight maybe if he would start. I see he's got the microphone there. Maybe he could start with these comments. I'm aware of it, but I'm going to let you explain to our audience. First of all, if you would explain to them what the word Omaha means, so that they understand, first of all, who your people are in context of your own language, and if you would, please. And then if you could tell us a little bit about the tribal structure as it was then in the 7 clans.
Yes, Scott, it's my understanding leadership roles were handed down hereditarily from different clans that passed them on. But I think I want to comment about the time of Umpatunga, Big Elk. There was a transition. Yeah, he saw that things were changing. All the leaders, I believe, realized that generation before them, prior to Lewis and Clark, was a different lifestyle, was a different way of life, that there was a change coming and establishing government-to-government relationships, how the French traders appointed a spokesperson. Those type of things were inevitable. And I think my understanding is that Big Elk changed some of that concept by adopting Joseph LaFlèche and giving him that hereditary position as being a chief. There was a time when people chose their leaders by their deeds, how they lived, how they took care of the people. They lived a different lifestyle. In fact, I hear it today. It's a common phrase, when they say about those 7 sacred seats, that they are like our fathers. They are our providers and protectors. And indeed, during Big Elk's time, that was true and was held very sacred. But I think it was a time of constant change during Iron Eyes era. He went on the last buffalo hunt. Now, when Lewis and Clark came here, that my understanding is that is a very sacred event that happened every year. They went and they prayed and they went out in search of that buffalo, because everything about it helped the Omaha people. Everything about that buffalo was benefited. The food, the tools, implements, the sinew, the the hides themselves, and that whole annual event of going out and searching for that buffalo was a sacred event every year. And then to come back home during this time of the harvest, being that they were hunters and gatherers and horticulturalists, they planted crops and it was harvest time. So it was a time of plenty, but it seemed to me, from my understanding, that it was a time of celebration and thanksgiving, that they were storing up for the hard winters here in Nebraska. And it was all in relationship to the Creator. I look at it from that perspective, that it was a very spiritual time for the Omaha people. To go back a little further, the Omahas, from my understanding, were one of 5 tribes that were at one time one big tribe. And that was the Quapaw, the Kanza, the Osage, the Ponca, and the Omaha, which means against the current. Literally, a little translation is against the current. That they had migrated from the Ohio River Valley and were originally Eastern Woodlands Indians, and had started their migration around about the time of Columbus in the 1400s and moved westward. But as far as the clans and the seats, I would turn this portion to Pierre, and he could talk about that. I remember him mentioning that it was originally 10.
From what I understand, that there was 10 clans, and there was a meeting that was held that 7 of the clans showed up, and that 3 declined to be at this meeting. So the government recognized the 7 clans. And these clans that we have, they each had a chief to them, and they each had a sacred pipe that they possessed, each clan. And with these pipes, they were used for ceremonial purposes, and also they were used as mediation tools within the tribe, where they were, if there was problems amongst the people or different issues arose while these pipes were presented and used to resolve issues, as we use mediation today. There was other duties that the clans had to the tribe as a whole. Like where I come from, we get our clans through our father. It's a patriarchal system that we had, where our father, whatever his clan was, and his father before him, that's what clan you are. Myself, I'm Nkesabe. I come from the Black Shoulder Buffalo people amongst the Omahas. And I understand that through my teachings, I shouldn't be touching the charcoal of a fireplace. I had other obligations to the tribe. We took care of the sacred tobacco. The tobacco that we made was made from local willows and flowers and other plants. I'd like to mention that these things were held very sacred to us. I noticed in the TV shows, they always seem to show us in a teepee smoking a pipe, but it wasn't like that. There never was in the history of any native people where somebody died from lung cancer from tobacco abuse, that sort of thing, because it was held in such reverence that we used it occasionally and spiritually, ceremonially. So these other types of, or this lung cancer and things like that, they were, depicted by Hollywood that I think really did us unjust amongst the general public in America.
Well, thank you, Pierre, and it's good to see you again, and I appreciate so much the time we had together last week up at Macy. And in fact, I hope that we get to see each other before I get out of the area there. And as you know, and for our viewers may not be aware, but that flag that was presented to us by your people last week has been flying on our red pirogue, which was the pirogue that Labiche and Cruzat would have been moving on as they moved up the river, and it's been with great pride that we have flown the flag of your nation. And as you mentioned there about things like lung cancer and those kind of contemporary things we talk about, and I mentioned the flag, and when we talk about the flag, we're talking about the flag of the Omaha Nation today. And I'd like to talk a little bit about your nation today for a few moments before we move on to the kids. And one of the things that I think it's important, again, for our audience to understand is, unlike some of the other tribes that we have highlighted and had the opportunity to spend time with and interview in the past, the Omaha Nation is living today, although on a much reduced piece of land. Your reservation today is located on what has been your homeland for many, many, many centuries, unlike many of the tribes that have been forced to relocate over the last several centuries. And that's got to be a spiritually powerful thing for you. I know when we were up there the other day, I was speaking with Mike Tyndall and some others, and we were talking about the reservation today, and what a beautiful place it is. I would tell our viewers that if you're following the trail and you have a choice about driving 29 up the Iowa side, and a lot of neat things to see there, but the Nebraska countryside and the Omaha Reservation near going through Macy, it's really beautiful, beautiful land there. And could you talk a little bit, first of all, about the reservation today, both in terms of the physical reservation, the piece of land, and how it was once part of a much larger land. I think that, excuse me, that we had Doran mentioned that I think a little while ago, but about the size of the land and what used to be the tribal lands, but also then about some of the issues on the reservation today. The school system, how many people live there? You've got a beautiful school. I was in it the other day. Talk a little bit about that. I know there's a casino that's been a big boon to the economy, but if you would just talk a little bit about contemporary life for the Omaha today.
Well, today we have two schools within the boundaries of the Omaha Nation, one in Walt Hill and one here in Macy. Macy is our headquarters and always has been. Far as when I was growing up, this is where I grew up at. Far as how big the reservation is, I think Doran can probably give you a better number of that. That part of the size of our tribe, our tribal land. We're located about 25 miles south of Sioux City, Iowa, about 80 miles north of Omaha, along the Missouri River here. We're just about 10 miles north of Decatur. But I'm going to hand this over to Doran, and he can probably talk a little bit more about the agriculture and the land that we farm and how many acres and that sort of thing.
At the time of 1854, when the Omaha tribe signed a treaty with the United States, I'd like to mention too that the Omaha tribe never warred with the United States. And at that time we signed the treaty, my great-grandfather was one of those signers. They didn't actually sign, they used their thumbprint. The 7 major clans put their thumbprint to that. And at that time we were linguists. Like I mentioned before, we have state of Nebraska, and also 3rd Western Iowa. And when we did that, we chose this site here at Macy area. At that time, we had 360,000 acres, which is Thurston County right now. But through the years of various laws that were passed, we lost many acres, not of our own fault, but it was the laws that my people did not understand. And at that time, they couldn't read or write. So we lost these lands through that system. And today, we own only 38,000 acres of the 360,000 that we originally signed for. That's called the tribal lands. Then there's another system called the allotment. There was an allotment act passed in 1920s, giving each individual member of the tribe acres of lands. We only have 15,000 acres of that today. So we've been reduced to sort of a checkerboard in Thurston County. But today we're in an endeavor to try to regain these lands, sometimes with our tribal members wanting to sell their allotments, so we do our best to try to purchase those back to keep that within our base reservation lands.
Thank you very much, Doran. I appreciate that. And we are going to have to move on. And I'll tell you what, one of the things that I hope that we can do is use this opportunity as the beginning of a dialogue. Obviously, as you all know, the Discovery Expedition is deeply committed to First Nation issues. And we hope that this is the beginning of a dialogue, not just with us and as a mechanism for people to learn more about the Maha, but for other teachers and students around the country. We encourage you, if you have interest in learning more about these, the history of the Maha people and about life on the reservation or the history or contemporary issues, we're going to make websites available so that you can do that. And obviously, school's getting back in session, and I can tell you that you'll meet no finer group of people, and it's just been a joy to work with you all, and I hope that we'll have an opportunity to continue to do this as we move forward. We're going to move over to talk to the kids in just a moment, but I want to say a special thank you to Pierre Merrick, who, when I first talked to him about doing this, was excited and enthused, and we're going to use this bicentennial and make sure that this bicentennial is the beginning of a new day for all of us in this country, and we're going to restore the hoop of trust once and for all. And I can tell you, people talk about, sovereign nation issues and this, that, and the other thing. The image that is still in my heart from the other day when we were up there was I was so proud to help raise both of those flags together the other day. And as I drove around Macy the other day, our nation is at war, and there are many young Omaha who are serving in the farm services, and all around the reservation, the stars and stripes of the United States of America were flying. And it's an exciting thing to know that we live in a time where we're going to be able to bring cultures together instead of tearing them apart. And so I want to extend a very special thank you to all three of you gentlemen for being here today. And again, just look forward to seeing you on the trail. Thank you again. And Jim, now if we can go to the classes, I think we're going to start with Mr. Stoner's class today, and they're going to talk to us a little bit about the clans. I think they have a presentation for us on the clans that we just talked about with Mr. Merrick.
That's right, Scott. Mr. Stoner's class has a few things to set up, and they're coming in right now with them. I'm with Mrs. Wilson right now, and Miss Wilson, would you talk to us about Mr. Stoner's class and what's coming up? Okay.
Mr. Stoner and your students, would you please come up and start setting while we do this? We have middle school, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Our homeroom classrooms are multi-grade and family relationships. So the students in this class are generally cousins and siblings. Mr. Stoner, when you're ready, would you let me know?
Hurry, folks.
Good morning. I'd just like to say that we're going to continue on what Mr. Merrick was talking about a little bit and give you a visual aid of how the clans were situated in traditional times and where they camped around the circle. And you'll have to forgive me, I'm new to this area. Actually, I am a member of the Omaha tribe, but I never lived here for the last 40 years, so I apologize to my elders if I get things wrong, if I don't say things right. But I have some members of my class. Are they going to come up? Come on up. Come on up. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the clans. And who's the first one? Who's number one? Okay, this is Wayne Thompson, and he's going to talk about the first clan.
What do I say?
Just what you got.
Okay. Okay. The first clan is Waji Ste. The word translated to these who become angry. They are the keepers of the scared tet of war. Sometimes they are known as the Out clan. Because of this, they are not supposed to eat the flesh of the male elk or wear clothes made out of their skin.
Who's number two? Come on up.
In Kesobe, the word may refer to the black shoulder of the buffalo. This clan was responsible for the leading this buffalo clan.
Thank you. I'm just gonna, in order to save time, I'm gonna go through the clans and just say the name so you guys know where they're all from. There was 10, I've heard 7, and then I've heard 10. So we put the 10 down that we knew of, and I'll try to say them right, but I don't know if I can. Onga, and it means the leader clan, and they were traditionally camped down here. There's Latada, which my grandfather was a member of Fremont, and that's the bird clan. There's Gonje, which means wind, is a wind clan. Mothi Kagache, which is Earthmaker's clan. And as you go around, there's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, so you can follow. Teside, which is Buffalo Tail. Tapa, which is the 8th clan, was up there. And Kejide, which is Red Shoulder, I think somebody was talking about that. And Ishtasura, which is the Thunder clan. And those are the 10 clans. And in order to save time, in order to save my students from being shown their bashfulness, I'll just go through those really quick. So thank you very much.
Mr. Stoner, before you give up the microphone, Mr. Stoner, can you talk just real quickly? I mean, for the sake of our viewers, understanding that what you pointed out to this on the circle is actually, if I'm not mistaken, the configuration of the camp in the village, right? And the people camped in certain places in relationship to one another?
Yes, I believe that's correct. In traditional times, when the village would be established, this is how they would actually live. And this would be to the east and south and the different directions. So the clans would camp according to where, the relationship was.
Thank you so much, and thank you to Mr. Stoner and to his class. I think we're ready now for Mrs. Kai.
Mrs. Kai's class, please quickly come on up. They are going to do some Omaha language words.
We are students in the Omaha Nation Middle School. We are going to tell you some words in the Omaha language.
The male greeting is
and the female greeting is oh.
We could not hear those greetings.
the male greeting is aha.
The female greeting is
Guess. Thank you is Weeblaha. Here you go, Lauren.
Teacher is Wagonse. Now we're going to talk about the numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4,
Shata.
6,
Pedamba.
8,
Pedabe.
9,
Shanka.
10,
Nida.
We're going to tell you about the Omaha Nation colors. Red, black, white, green, blue, yellow, purple, pink, gray, orange, brown. The Omaha
That
letters
was great.
don't
Maybe
have a
we
word
can
for
also
tomorrow.
have.
Instead, we say a word that means tomorrow. Guilty. There. Huh? Say it again. I don't know. Say it louder. Huh?
Okay, we're finished with that. That's a few of the Omaha words. We apologize if we've mispronounced anything.
I'll tell you what, Miss Kai, thank you so much, and thank you to Miss Kai's class. I think it's time for Mr. Weiland and the friendship sticks.
Mr. Weiland's class, please come forward.
Okay, our class decided to go ahead and do friendship sticks. This idea came originally from a 4-H project, and the friendship sticks originally came from Peru, and during our course of the studies this year we do world geography, so this way it kind of incorporates somebody else's culture that they can also learn things about. What they actually do is we take a stick, just a piece of wood, and it has to be anywhere from 1 to 2 inches in diameter and about 14 inches long. And then they go ahead and they take yarn, tie it around the top, and the design is supposed to end up being the same on both sides, but they can use as many different types of yarn as what they want. When you're finished with it, they give it to somebody else, and they're to keep it and remain friends with that person then for a long time. So
maybe we could, if we could have maybe our camera go in tight on those and take a look at the different designs. I think that'd be great. And thank you so much for sharing these with us as well.
who's next?
Thank you, Mr. Weiland. And I think, well, I know I'm very excited about this next presentation. I think that we're going to have Ms. Tyndall and Cyril and Long, teachers Tyndall, Cyril, and Long, and their students, and we're going to get to see the hand game now. Now, this is an exciting thing. This is a real cultural, something very specific with the Omaha, and I know that Pierre kept promising to beat me soundly at this game, and I didn't get a chance to spend time with him on that up there, but we're going to look forward to seeing the kids do this presentation today. And thank you all for preparing this for us. And I would encourage our audience once again to send us their online questions and comments at lewisandclark@clayton.k12.mo.us. And folks, you're in for a real treat here. And maybe we can have one of the teachers tell us a little bit about the hand game while we're waiting for it to be set up and before we see it.
Scott, the students will be talking about the hand game and explain it, and I'm going to be bringing the mic to them right now.
Very good. Thank you, Jim. And once again, thank you to the students of Macy Middle School.
Hi, my name is Vijay. I was chosen to be in charge of this hand game. The person who is in charge has to hand out the feather, the stone, and keep score with the sticks.
Hi, my name is Alyssa. The hand game has been an Omaha tribe tradition for hundreds of years. It started in the lodges and moved to the community building.
Hand games are held on birthday celebrations, anniversaries, fundraisers, and memorials.
Some of the things we use for hand games are feathers, stones, sticks and stones, and the drum. Now we will demonstrate a hand game.
Okay, Scott, we're just about to go here. We're waiting for the students to be ready. And notice how they're walking around the room right now at the beginning of the game. Passing out the feathers.
The two people that have the feather hide the stone first. Okay, they're each hiding the feather, and the one that guesses the stone will hide the stone. Okay, it's the women's side, or this side, the south side. You hide the stone now. Give the stone to her. No. Give the stone to her. Now she's going to go around the drum. Go around the drum. And she's going to give it to two people. Now they're going to hide the button. And the boy will guess. Okay, they got caught, so now the stones will go on the other side. Now, if they drop the button, they lose. And it will go back on the other side.
I've got to be, unfortunately, the man in charge of the time today, and we're gonna have to wrap up today's broadcast. But that was a tremendous little look at that piece of the story. Want to thank everybody there. We're not quite off the air yet, but I was wondering if we could. Once again, I want to say a special thank you to all the young people there at Macy and tell them, what a great place. I had the opportunity to visit your school the other day. What a great school you've got. You've got an excellent principal and teachers there. And I, embrace this opportunity. You've had a great opportunity. People from all over the country have joined you today and learned about what's going on at Macy. And I was wondering if maybe we could get you all to, do you guys have a school song or anything there that you could sort of wrap up a little bit with today? And I've got one special thing at the end, but do you guys have a school song or a cheer or any sort of chant or anything you guys do to celebrate or anything?
I'm going to break in, Scott, just for a second. We have one more comment to be made before we go there. So.
Yeah, Scott, wanted to comment on the couple of presentations that these young people did. The language is an important part of the Omaha culture. Our young people here are learning it, but they say that if you don't use it within 2 generations, you can lose that. We need to develop it as a functional language lot of these young people's parents have a hard time with the Omaha language as well. So it's good that the young people are picking that up and learning those things. This game that you just witnessed was centered around that drum. It's about public acknowledgement. It's a social game. It's of honoring. They dance. When the loser side, they give them a gourd and they dance. Others get up and dance with them. They help them. It's all about fellowship and promoting and recognizing each other publicly. I wanted to say that a little bit about the game and the language. There are over 511 federally recognized tribes with over 300 different dialects. And the Omaha language is broken down into two genders, a male and female type of language. So it's important to understand that this is the next generation of Omaha speaking people. So it's very important. The generation before, their parents were sent to government boarding schools, they were punished if they spoke their language. So it's a resurgence, it's coming back. And this is the next generation of our culture right here. And I wanted to say that much, and thank you for allowing me to be here.
Dwight, thank you very much, and I appreciate you taking the time to say that. And to the young people there, you know, some of the issues that are current and important on the reservations today among the tribes, you know, a lot of these issues aren't very different from issues in our inner cities today with immigrant families who are faced with the loss of language, and you know, those of us who our own languages from our European cultures have died away and we don't use them anymore. And it's what a great time it is in America that we can celebrate the diversity of our culture, and instead of understanding that while we all may use English as a common language, that there's room in this country for us to be able to celebrate and preserve our individual cultural backgrounds and identities and be stronger for that diversity. So, you know, we don't want to lose any of our culture anymore. We want to preserve it, because the more we preserve, it's just like biodiversity in our environment, it's cultural diversity, and we're so happy to have had the opportunity to share not only the time on the reservation this past week, but these several broadcasts that we're going to be involved with as well. So thank you all very much. And is there something there, again, thank you, Dwight, is there something that the kids can leave us with? But right before you leave, Jim, I'd like you to come back for one final shot here.
Here we go. Let's say it together. Okay, Scott, let's come back to you.
Okay, how about everybody saying, how about it? This is the new dog, Bison, is going to be joining us, and he loves kids and he wishes he was there getting a bunch of pets from you guys. So at any rate, this is the new dog, Bison. Thank you all so much. Until next time, we're going to proceed on, but I'd sure like to hear something like from Macy, Nebraska, we proceed on.
All right, this is Macy. We'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.
We proceed on. Thank you all. Goodbye, Macy.